Go.
Good afternoon. Hi there. How are you? My name is Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I am joined by Rollo Tomasi, the rational male, the godfather himself of the manosphere. And you are listening to the Rational Male 101. This is episode 44, the hierarchy of relationship needs. Rollo, how you doing, buddy?
Good. And how are you?
It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Glad to be on board. So we want to do a couple things today. First of all, the inspiration for today's show was Rich Cooper. Rich did a little thing, I think yesterday, about 7 minutes long. He responded to this list that a young lady put up of 70 things, 70 requirements she had to have from the guy that would ultimately be her Prince Charming. And you remember the girl's name? Was it Kirsten? Kirsten Corley. Kirsten Corley. And we just want to play a little bit of the video here for you so you have some context here and understand what we're talking about. Now, Rollo, when I see stuff like this, to me, it reads like I feel like I'm a hostage or I'm negotiating with somebody who's holding a family member hostage. It's a list of demands that you have to meet to date this fascinating princess. Yes. So let's give it a little bit of a listen here.
And we got to figure out how old she is. We're taking bets.
My guess is 26.
You're saying 26. Okay. 26 is what. Here we go.
Good morning, guys. I don't usually do videos on Fridays or in the morning, but I woke up with an article doing super well. So I wanted to talk to you guys about it. And I say thank you guys for sharing it and liking it and reading it. It is stay single until you meet a guy like this. So I had gotten this idea. I was having a conversation with my mother and her parents, and my mother and her friends and other parents about chivalry. And they said, nobody in my generation understands chivalry or treats girls with respect. And I had completely countered it. I said, it's the right people who treat girls properly, who are chivalrous. And I get it, a lot of backlash from my friends. They're always like, Harris, you have really high expectations, or these are unrealistic today. And I said, no, the expectations I have are the way my guy friends treat me and the way I've been treated since I was 14. I've had, I brought up to you guys, I've had the same best guy friends since I was 14 years old.
Okay, that's enough. We really don't need to give them a lot more.
It's not so much.
So I just wanted them to see her and hear her. Okay. Sure. Now, first of all, with a list of demands like these, 70 things that are required, right? I'm expecting to see a 10. And I don't want to be mean or cruel here, but the 10's not there. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
And but this ties into something you talk about every week, that women, attention is the coin of the realm, right? But women have, especially in this day and age, an unrealistic and overinflated sense of self-worth. I believe that this young lady really thinks she is a 10. And part of the reason she thinks that is, if you go to her Instagram account, she's got 35,000 followers.
Right.
Why? I don't know, but she does. And her thing is she writes a lot. She does some videos. She writes a lot, but she writes about relationship issues. And can I just read up a couple of the things?
Yeah. Okay. It's easier if you read them off.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm not gonna do them all though.
No, that's
okay. Asks you on a real date and follows through. Holds open your doors. Pulls out your chair. Takes your jacket. Stands with you. Stands when you excuse yourself from the table. Lets you order first. Always pays. Stands on the outside of the sidewalk. This does sound like old school chivalry, right? I mean, all the way. And then let me just fast forward to a couple of other things. This one Rich had a field day with. Yeah. Takes care of you when you've had too much to drink. Oh, so you're an alcoholic. Okay, that's good to know up front. Asks you how you are and waits for an answer. We should probably do a show on that someday, because that really is an issue with women. You never ask me how I am. You just say this or do that. It's like, why don't you ask me how I am and actually listen? Talks confidently about the future, pays for your cab, kisses your forehead, learns what you like in bed, learns to read you and know when something isn't right, still gives you butterflies, reaches for your hand when walking. And she goes on through 70 of these things. And again, when I see a list like this, it makes me feel like I'm dealing with a kidnapper, and they've got a family member. They've got one of my kids. And if you want to see your kid back alive, these are the 70 requirements you have to hit.
You're gonna have to do.
And when you put the list together with the visual, the optics there, it's like, you really ought to be grateful to just get a date.
Right. And okay, so there's a lot to unpack in all of this. And I watched Rich I think he only went for like 7 minutes on
7 minutes. It was good,
it was a good 7 minutes, but there's a lot to this. I'm working on a post right now, and the reason I titled this video The Hierarchy of Relationship Needs is because that's kind of what I'm building on right now. If anybody is familiar with the Hierarchy of Needs by Abraham Maslow, that's what I'm sort of playing on. And it's going to be like, what is the hierarchy of needs to get into a long-term relationship in a red pill perspective, and red pill aware men, for men and for women. Okay. Now she is kind of like the opposite of this. It's like she is making all these demands. And if you go on like any like Plenty of Fish or OkCupid or any of these places where it's like, this is what I need from a guy for a long-term relationship. So if you go and you look at dating profiles on any online dating, you're right. It's like, it's what the blogger Royce used to say is the 436 bullet point checklist that women have, that men have to find some way to satisfy. Now, of course, those come in different priority orders, but there is always, it's a joke, right? It's just to say, hey, look, there's so many more prerequisites that women have that men do not have. And this is what, and the longer women spend on social media, the bigger the egos, the more
they feel they're entitled to these things.
Yeah, the more inflated their own sense of self becomes because of in the sexual marketplace. Now they're talking like, one of the things I've talked about in the past has been the difference between the localized sexual marketplace and the globalized sexual marketplace. And so when you see someone like this who has, what do you say, 35,000 followers on Instagram?
Yes, on Instagram.
So that is the global sexual marketplace. There is no way on God's green earth this woman could get 35,000 people to listen to her in a stadium in person. Okay. So she's appealing to a global sexual marketplace. So we have to put it into context here that this is what she's doing. So there's that aspect of it. She's got an overinflated sense of self, an overinflated sense of worth. And we teach women this from a very early age. From like we talk about how we teach boys as if they're defective girls when they're 5 years old. Well, we teach women as if they are little entitled princesses, literally in some cases, that you are a princess and you can do anything you want and you are more valuable and greater than you possibly can imagine. And so we watch Disney and we watch every little princess movie that Disney's put out reinforces what I call the fempowerment narrative. Now this woman gets to be about 26, 27 years old. And now we see the result of that. We see the result of this, essentially what it is social engineering, but it's this acculturation. It's this conditioning. Like I talk about how men have a blue pill conditioning. This woman right here has a blue pill conditioning. And
by the way,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
She's building this up as if she is entitled to this, and she's not alone. It's not just this girl. It's like it's most women who are also an active part of the global sexual marketplace who will do something like the reason why she gets such like this video goes viral or she gets the kind of reaction she does is because there are at least 35,000 other entitled princesses that want to have exactly the same thing. And so what, and then finally the last part of this that I wanted to get to is, and I've talked about this before on my blog, but it's what is chivalry? And this is something that she mentions here by name. And I think that a lot of women are confused as to what chivalry actually is, because what it is it's women wanting to enjoy the benefits of the old social contract. That's what they in their head. That's not what chivalry is, but that's in their head. It's like, oh, he opens the door for me. He kisses me on the forehead. He treats me like a lady, and he takes me to the dance, and he carries my books home from school, and that kind of old school, old social contract stuff. While at the same time,
it's a Hollywood version of chivalry that really doesn't have any.
Oh man,
it isn't real chivalry.
I have written at least 3 different essays, and now I'm going to have to put them in the description, but 3 different essays on how we get confused about what chivalry actually is. And because the way that women think of chivalry is actually a bastardized form of chivalry. Because what happened is during the Middle Ages, and I'm picking on Western cultures here because this has happened in Eastern cultures as well, but there is this the chivalric code amongst men. It was a conditions of honor. And, you know, you never hit an unarmed guy. You never hit him while he's not looking the other way. We actually use elements of chivalry in boxing and martial arts and things like that as well. And so what happened is that the women of the time of the Middle Ages, when we think of traditional chivalry, what they did is they incorporated their own needs into the idea of chivalry, so that at that time, during the time that we start to think of chivalry as in respect to women, it's when women took the idea of courtly love and they put it into chivalry. And now, not only do you have are you honor bound, they saw that the idea of honor amongst men was useful. And so they said, okay, guess what? Now it's not just don't hit the guy when he's down. You have to bring Milady a flower, and you've got to fight for her honor, and you've got to
have no sense of honor,
and you have to put your kerchief down over the muddy puddles so that she can walk across and stuff like that. And that's what she's talking about right here. It's this romanticized idea that was never had anything to do with real.
The story I want to throw to you is because I'm seeing, as we're talking about all of this, I'm seeing how it's implemented firsthand. Now, I've got 3 daughters, right? My youngest is 16, the oldest is 26. But I've got a granddaughter, Olivia, who is 3 years old. This is a trip and a half. She comes over completely decked out. She's a princess. She's a Disney princess. And I said, "What are you?" She said, a princess. I said, "Who made you a princess?" Because as a reader of the Rational Mail, it takes a man to make you a princess, right? She says, "I did." And I said, "Where's your kingdom?" She goes, "My room." I'm there like, we're building another monster to send out into the real world. Well, I mean, that's how early they program them.
Oh yeah. It's the same thing. Like when we talk about how we take little boys, and if they act like little boys, then we want to drug them and we want to give them Adderall or Ritalin or whatever, and we put them off in the corner until they learn how to behave. And the way to learn to behave is to act more like a little girl. Well, the way we treat little girls at 5 years old is we teach them to be princesses, unearned, just because they are. And one of the things that she's talking about in this video, and really the fact that she even has this list of demands, that's what this is. It's a list of demands. Like you were talking about how it was like a hostage situation.
It is. It's a shakedown. I want these 70 things.
It's a shakedown. I like that. It is a shakedown. Because what it is it's this list of prerequisites that a guy has to. These are the hoops that you have to jump through. Remember when we talk about how women make rules for beta males and they break rules?
That's exactly
these are the rules that they break for alpha male.
Rich nailed it yesterday. He said what she's doing is building the perfect beta.
Oh yeah,
that's what this list is.
Well, you know where he got that from is actually that's a post that I've done. It's called building a better beta.
But that's what it is. There's nothing in there that's alpha.
Yeah,
it's all of these lists, and then again, the prize at the end of the rainbow. I'm sorry, I don't want to be mean, but it's not there. It's not what I'm looking for. It's like, really, you ought to be grateful that somebody's asking you out.
Well, yeah, and so that's you and I have talked about this on your show as well. Is women don't understand the concept of value added. So here you have it. Like when a woman looks like she does. Okay, I'm not saying like she's hideous and deformed or anything like that, but she's a little thick. Okay, she's a little overweight, but still she has that sense of entitlement. This is the only thing that's going to be good enough for me, and it's not based on anything other than entitlements that she's learned from the time she was 5 years old. This is what you should expect from men. They should give you this, and they should give you that, and they should have a job, and they should like puppy dogs, and they should love their mothers, and they should open the door for you, and they should do all this great stuff. But what have you done? What are you that you would deserve that? And because it's just the fact that you're a woman, just because you're a girl, you are entitled to respect.
Right. This is the question every guy should ask after reading that list of 70 things. What's in it for me? Okay. And what if let's say I can check all of these off, and maybe, I don't know, add another 2 or 3. What do I get in return? What's my prize? Because I'm not seeing the prize. Although I told you, and I don't know if this is a quote from her or if it's something she hijacked from somebody else, right? But this is a profound truth that applies to both men and women, especially in this age. She says, you ruin your life by settling. You settle in love because you're unsure of what you want. I mean, just stop and think about that. How many people do you know, men and women, who are with a particular person because, well, I don't know, the clock's running and I really don't know what I want, or I can't find what I want, so I guess this will do. She says you settle because, You ruin your life by settling. You settle in love because you're unsure of what you want, and you settle in life because you fear change. Most people, when they try something new, they try it, and they try it only once. And if they fail, they'll never try it again because they're afraid to step out of that comfort zone. People that are really successful have failed so many times it would make you puke. But it's through those failures that they were able to step outside of the comfort zone. Once you get outside of that comfort zone and realize, whoa, there's other stuff out here. It is so empowering. In fact, it can become intoxicating.
One of the things that I'm writing about right now with respect to this hierarchy of needs in the relationships is that, and I'm beginning the essay this way, is that a lot of guys, what this is rooted in is guys vetting for a long-term relationship. And if you are familiar with, I think you and I talked about this before, about how Rich did that one tweet about, well, first of all, never marry a single mother, never get involved with single mothers, but also this list of things that a man should have, a prerequisites that a man should have, that women should qualify to be a candidate, to be eligible to be married by a guy who actually is, maybe he's economically attractive, right? Or maybe he's just a guy that is looking for the best thing that he can get. People lost their minds. Alexander Cortez did the same thing. Hunter Drew did the same thing. They come out with these lists, and it goes viral, and it gets on the 6 o'clock news because, oh my God, a man somewhere on planet Earth said, I want to have a woman who has long hair, is feminine, is X, Y, and Z, knows how to cook, is also fun in bed. And imagine, like, this woman has 70 prerequisites, and they're all, this classic old social contract, chivalrous nonsense, but that's no big deal. That's okay. But if a guy has that, it means he's a monster for having any kind of prerequisite for something like that. So I wanted to draw attention to the fact that when we talk about what it is we want or we need out of a long-term relationship, when we're talking about hierarchies of, what's the basis, what's the basics that you got to have. A guy can't even have 6, and she's talking about 70.
Right. And by the way, if a woman comes out with a list like this, the girl, what's her name? Kristen, whatever her name is. Women will not only affirm her, but they'll go, you left a couple of off. Here's a couple of other ones that I want to toss out. But they go, crazy when it's a guy that does. But that sort of segues into what we want to start with here today. What we want to do, the hierarchy of relationship needs. Well, we've heard from the girls what they want. Okay. But when it comes to guys, I want to get into this today. What are the most base needs a woman should fulfill to be an acceptable mate? I'm talking about somebody that you're either going to be in a very long-term relationship with or married to. What are the things you got to look for? Because guys, our list is basically pretty short. Does she look good? Is she hot in bed? That's I think that's
sexual availability. That's the only thing that men really. Well, I mean, okay, and let's start with the guys here really quickly. One of the reasons, like I would get in this conversation, this debate, I guess, with Rich and Ryan and some of these other guys, is why is it that men don't vet, and is it even important for a guy to vet? Because most guys, their criteria are 2 things: is she hot and is she available? That's the male imperative. That's why guys turn to pornography, because both of those questions can be made.
But it's so short-sighted.
Oh yeah.
And you can't, when you're in your 20s, you could go back in time to talk to me in my 20s and tell me all this stuff, and it wouldn't matter because I know better. I'm going to do what I want to do. But there has to be more there. There has to be more there. I mean,
now I'm going to ask you. Now here's the thing. Why do you think that? Why do you think it is that more guys don't have a longer list of prerequisites? Why?
I'll give it to you right now. We live in a hedonistic society. Instant gratification. I want mine and I want it now. I don't care about all that other stuff.
Okay,
I want what I see right here.
That's okay. True, but that's priority. That's the base needs that we have as from an evolved sense. For us for men to solve their reproductive problems, there's only 2 criteria: hot and available. And even available can be negotiable, right? So she just simply has to have something, or she's got, like we say, nobody's ugly after 2 a.m. She's got to be there. She's got to be ready, and that's it. Because in our evolutionary past, it was what what John calls ejaculate and evacuate. We've got to get in there, get the act done, and move on, because God only knows if we're going to get tied down, or we're going to, or her husband or her family are somewhere around that are going to be able to kill me. So I've got to be able to, that's one of the reasons we default to hedonism, to promiscuity, because that's what we're wired to do. But we have to think more. We have to, because we have to live lives. We have to be pro-social. We teach guys to be in control of that. So, but here's why I think that why men don't do that, because men have a scarcity mentality. Remember when we talk about guys
availability. You know, you're on.
You never know when your next meal is going to come from. Right.
Let me give you an example real quick here. This reminds me of the car dealership. I can give you whatever it is you want. This is a brand new Camaro, whatever. I can give you this price, but only today. You walk out of here, it's never going to be this cheap again. You know, this high pressure sales technique, and it's the scarcity mentality. Because if I don't get this now, there's not going to be one for me. So I better get it now.
Yeah, exactly. And and why is that? Well, primarily because of the 80-20 rule. When we talk about the Parental principle, how 100% of women are interested in the top 20% of guys. Okay. And that doesn't mean they're actually getting them. I know we can talk about that later on, but here's the facts of this, is that at least a vast majority of men are low SMV men. They're low on the scale. They are not the first choices that most women would make, is if they wanted to get together with a guy for in the long term. They want the hot guy. They want Chris Hemsworth, right? They want the guy who's hot but also funny, and also does all those things that what's her face was just, all 70 of that of the checklists there. So
think of it this way, for guys listening. Think of it this way: if you're in a room with 9 other guys, so 10 of you in a room, is she going to go for you first? Are you the one she's immediately drawn to?
Are you the one she's going to break those rules to get with, right? So a guy who looks like, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, he doesn't have to jump through those hoops to get to her, because particularly if she looks like that, because when you realistically evaluate what her sexual market value is compared to a guy who is in that top 20th percentile there. So here's the thing. There's still that 80% of guys who are in a scarcity mentality, because they have to alter their mating strategy, because they don't know when the next opportunity for them to reproduce is going to come up. So when a woman finally gives them an indicator of interest, when she finally says, hey, you're kind of cute, why don't you come over here, let's go have coffee or something like that. That's why guys get one-itis. That's why I always say guys need to learn to first make themselves a prize, make yourself your own mental point of origin, but also to spin plates, because what happens is it breaks you out of that scarcity mentality that guys, the 80% guys, those guys always get, because they don't, again, their opportunities are few and far between. What is the first thing?
What's the first thing you get though when you're a guy like, in fact, when we went to the 21 convention, that was my message. You all think that the girl's the prize. I'm here to tell you today, you've been sold a lie. You're the prize. The minute you say that though, or you even acknowledge that publicly, what are women in particular going to say? Your ego. Look at he thinks
you're arrogant.
He thinks he's hot, what, right? Yeah, right. But that's you have to have it. You can call it arrogance. I call it confidence. And you can see it in the way a person walks. You can see it in the way a person talks, the way they conduct themselves, whether or not they've got confidence. That immediately identifies them as the alpha. They're the prize. Women know that. They may not admit it, but they know it.
If the girl says you're a jerk, you're doing it right. That's true.
So do you steal that from Tom Likas or Joe Rogan?
I forget. Yeah, it's been around for quite some. I probably got it from Mystery, actually. Anyways, I was just gonna say is that I think that most guys don't vet. First of all, they've been taught from the time they're 5 years old by their female teachers that they are not allowed to have that list of priorities. Yeah. So if a guy like Rich or Alex or whoever makes a list, and a very short list, like 5 or 6 criteria, well, we've have an entire world that tells you you're bad for having that. So now take that negative reinforcement that you get every time you say, I want this in a mate, and then take that and combine that with the fact that you're not getting it as much as most guys are anyway, or you're not getting it as the top 20 percentile. So you take that scarcity mentality plus a whole world that is telling you that you are bad for even having these. So what are you going to do as soon as a girl says? And then, of course,
you hit on something important here, and I want to go back to We are taught from a very early age by predominantly female teachers. So I'm going to go back to Rich from yesterday. If you want to learn how to catch fish, you don't ask fish for advice. You go to a fisherman. And that's exactly, see, this, we got it backwards, especially in the schooling system where you've got at least 70% of the teachers being female. And those are the ones who are having the big influence on you growing up. And compound matters by you know, say you're a boy and you're in a single parent household, you don't have a dad around. It makes it even worse. But that's, you're taking advice from the fish. The fish have taught you how to date.
Right. And they are going to, and this is why, and I'm considering doing this for my Wednesday Rolo Solo show. I want to talk about the program, the role that you're expected to play as a beta male. It's what I call the betas in waiting. And so what we've had for the last really 3 or 4 generations of men, maybe even 5 generations of men, right, is we have taught them to man down. We keep telling guys, you're going to need to man up, but we've told them their whole lives that they need to man down. And that's where you get these guys who don't want to vet because they don't feel that they're entitled to vet. They're thanking whatever God it is that they worship that a woman actually gave them the time of day.
Whatever God it is they worship.
Yeah, well, whatever you want to talk about. But they're thanking their lucky stars that a girl that actually, touched them on the shoulder or something like that, because and so that means to them it's divine providence that this must be my soulmate, and I have to put everything I have into this because I've been taught by my female teachers from the time I was 5 years old that I'm supposed to sacrifice. I'm supposed to be supportive. This is the one. I don't want to be like my old man. I want to do mom proud, and I want to put all of my eggs in one basket. And that's what's called the strategic pluralism theory. And I've got a post in the works for that.
So I want to get to the list though here, because this is the whole purpose of the program today. We want to put together a list of what are the most basic needs a woman should fulfill to be acceptable to a male as a long-term, mate, for lack of a better term. Obviously, there's got to be some spark there at the beginning, some sort of attraction. And like it or not, because women will say, well, we're just sex objects. There has to be some sort of physical attraction, something that clicks there between the two of you, some sort of an attraction, physical attraction usually. Mm-hmm. And the thing that will be the best, if you can get it and you can keep it, is the desire. You've done columns on, we've done shows on genuine desire. You call it lust, call it whatever you want. You both want each other as much. I want her as much as she wants me. If you've got that, that's going to be the basis for the start.
Number one, yeah, I think that should be the base of the pyramid when we're talking about the hierarchy of needs.
So there has to be that attraction. There has to be that desire. And guys, quit settling. You don't want just desire. You want genuine desire. Mm-hmm. Why settle for anything less? Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Well, so that's I've pretty much everything not everything, but like the basis for a lot of the rational male is founded on genuine desire. Mm-hmm. Is getting into a point. So you are one of these guys that she is breaking these rules to get with. Like God damn, I wish I had the link really quick. There's a really great post that it's kind of one of his lesser known posts, but this is Royce again. And he has this one post called women's wants or women's prerequisites collapses like a house of cards when it comes to reality. So you can have women who will say, I need a guy who does this 70 different things, right? I need him to do all of these things. But when you see when I talk about the medium as the message, you're listening to her talk and say all of these things, and yet she'll go and fall in love with a convicted felon in prison, right? Or she'll go out with she'll go out with the drummer of the band, right? She still will break all of those rules because it's love. She's going with her emotional state. And that's something I wanted to also get into here as well, is like when we are, as men, because we are raised to be more emotional, we're raised by our female teachers. That's another area that kind of hangs us up when it comes to what do we need? What do we deserve? What does a guy deserve in a woman? Like, what is going to, like, first of all, question one, why can't you even ask for that or even voice the idea that there are some things other than maybe having sex. You know, I want a chick who's hot. I want her to be available. Okay, those are the two that are in the bottom of the pyramid. What comes after that? You're not even allowed to ask that. So you need to ask yourself, why is it we live in a society that demonizes men for even having that opinion? And then the other thing is when you are creating this sort of pyramid, this little hierarchy of needs, why is it that that you're thinking of things from a scarcity mentality? Why is it that is it because of your emotional state, or is it just because like the reality of your position as a guy who is a low SMV 80%er beta male guy?
One of the things I want to throw in here, and I don't know where we're going to put it on the list.
All right.
But is a woman's voice. And when I was in my 20s, 30s, this would have never mattered to me. It does now. And I've only met 2 women in my entire life whose voice was intoxicating. They had such a pleasing voice that, in fact, in one case, I don't want to say I fell in love with her because of her voice, but it was the kind of voice where I've got to meet her. I've got to see what's on the other end, because this voice just clicks with me. And the reason I'm bringing this up is especially, and every guy out there, if there's a guy out there listening who's over 40 and you've been married a while, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because that voice, if you're going to get married to somebody and you know, it's a covenant marriage, as Dr. Piper would say, you're going to be living with that voice for the rest of your life. How many guys do you know that will mock their wife's voice? Not necessarily to their face, but certainly behind their back. Glenn Beck's notorious for making fun of his wife's voice on the radio. It's like, you know, all that kind of that's a voice. You know, you could be the most beautiful woman on the planet, but if you sound like Joy Behar or Whoopi Goldberg or Fran Drescher, I don't want anything to do with you, because I'm gonna be taking an ice pick to my ears at some point just to stop the pain.
Okay, so that I'm writing. By the way, I'm writing all of these down so that we can at least build. Like when I write this essay, I want to have this as sort of our like focus group here. By the way, anybody who is watching this right now, if you have anything you think should be like a deal breaker for men in a long-term relationship, let me know, and we'll discuss them a little bit here. And by the way,
aren't you with the voice thing though? I mean,
yeah. Well, okay. So what I was going to say about the voice thing, and by the way, anybody giving me super chats right now, I'm going to get to those at the end of the show, and unless they are like, you know, part of what we're talking about right now. Anyways, the voice thing is I think that goes along with femininity, with wanting that traditional femininity, having that sweet voice, having that a lot of, you know, women get really offended when you say, well, you need to be more feminine. They get offended at that because they don't know how. They've always been taught to woman up and masculinize themselves. And so what they do is they conflate the ideas of masculinity that they've learned throughout their lives. And then they say, well, this is feminine. It is feminine to talk like that. It is feminine to be this way.
The smart ones know how to use it. I've got a chiropractor here in town who's been a client of mine on the radio station for 11 years. And he's got the lady that is at the front desk, the gatekeeper, Gozar. Okay. Her name's Dulcie. Her voice is a smile. And that's one of the most pivotal places with any business, whoever greets you first. And she always sounds like sunshine. I'm serious. Sunshine. In fact, I asked her one time, I said, do you ever have a bad day? She says, never at work. Because she knows how important that position is to getting patients in to see the doctor. And women, and I don't even know that it's something that has to be taught. Some women, it just comes naturally. It's intuitive, but it's like, you know it when you hear it. When you hear a truly feminine voice, something that exudes femininity, it is music to the male ear. It is pleasing. Somebody, you know, there's a lot of women, in fact, probably most women, I don't want to hear talk for a long time. I want to keep it like Twitter, 140 characters or less, please. But there's other women, and they're rare, they're very rare, that I could sit there and I could listen to you talk all day long. It doesn't matter what, but your voice is so pleasing to my ear, I could listen to you talk all day long.
Yeah, you know, there's been studies of that. Marty Hazelton has done the vocal intonation study for like when women are in their proliferative phase of the menstrual cycle, is they tend to their voices get down into kind of like that husky sound, like that the sexy voice kind of thing.
Brenda Vaccaro, come here, honey, give me a cigarette.
I mean, back in the not that one, but when they get to like remember back in the day when like phone sex was a thing and you would call 976 and you'd say, hi, how are you doing? That's the voice. Like that's the thing that sort of triggers. And I think you're right about that. There's something in And I would say there's something in the male psyche, something in our male evolved mental firmware that is responsive to women's voices, because that is a gender difference that has been around since 100,000 years ago. So I would say there's
quick story here. I was this was probably back in the 90s. I went to a powerlifting competition in Ohio, and the person that ran it was a lady, right? And I'm talking to her on the phone. The voice sounded like I just did with you. Come here, honey. Give me a kiss. Could you pick me up a cotton and Marlboro on the way home? That's what the voice.
Come rub grandma's shoulders.
When I met this lady, I was blown away. She's 32 years old, thick, luscious, long hair, stunning, absolutely stunning. And she was a female bodybuilder. And what happened was the steroids had lowered her. She sounded like a guy. And I'm there like, I can't believe that's who I was talking to on the phone, because the voice just doesn't match up with the physical appearance.
Yeah, you want that. That's interesting, because there's a principle in pickup artistry that talks about how the way that you look as a guy has to be congruent with what people see or what they're expecting of you based on what it is that they're looking at. I think the same thing holds true for women as well. So if you see a woman who is just this hot, perfect, 10, right? You're expecting that voice. You're expecting that attitude from. Now, if you see a woman with like purple, chopped purple hair or whatever, then you're kind of expecting, because that's a congruency. You're not, and that's funny, because like if you see like a woman who has, that boy cut kind of thing, and you're, do you think, oh, great, feminist, right?
If somebody says, do any women have feminine voices anymore? Yes, but they're becoming, it's almost like an endangered species. They're becoming a rarity.
Yeah, I would say so too, because, oh gosh, I can't believe we haven't talked about this topic before. I have a really great post, and it's called Sexy. And I wrote this back in, I think, 2012, and it was based on Emma Watson, because Emma Watson had cut her hair short, and Emma Watson used to be Emma Watson, I hope I'm getting this right, the one who was in Harry Potter, right? That little girl who ended up becoming, turned into a woman. She was the peak fantasy of so many guys online, that she was the subject, the most common subject of pornography fakes. Like, I put her face on porn because everybody really wanted to get with her, because they saw her grow up from like being 14 until she was like 20 or something like that. And so she had written this article about how she doesn't know how to feel sexy. She doesn't know how to do that. She'd cut her hair short and everything else. And that sort of like inspired me to write that one particular post. And it was that women today aren't taught, they don't need to be taught to be sexy. They don't have to learn seduction, because men's expectations of women are so low right now that all a woman has to do is show up naked and bring beer. And that's all that matters to guys. When we think about seduction, we always want to say, oh, Mata Hari, or we want to say like women are really good at seducing men. No. It takes much more for a man to be a good seducer than it does for a woman, because there's that sexual opportunism that men have, that they want to be seduced. They want a woman to do that. They want a woman to be sexually aggressive. That's why strippers make a lot of money, because they play into this idea that I'm going to be sexy for you. I'm going to do something for the express pleasure of a man. And so what happens is guys lose their minds. That's, again, we go back to that scarcity mentality, and guys don't know what to do with that. But women don't even, they have no idea how to be sexy. I was going to say the second part of that is they don't need to be sexy, because they've been told all their lives that they're entitled to the 70 qualities on this list. They're entitled to the perfect guy.
There is something too, and I can think of a couple of examples here. But when a woman almost uses a whisper tone, I'll never forget when I was teaching back in the day. We had the mayor come to address the school I was at, and I was sitting with the class towards the back end, and I was on the outside. So, and there was a TV reporter there who was new to the area. Her name was Lisa Zampa, very attractive young Italian woman. And she came up, and when she put her hand on my shoulder, I didn't know who it was, but I felt like a warmth, right? And then she whispered in my ear. It was, it was so embarrassing. I probably turned 30 shades of red. It just like melted and slid out of my chair. It was that hot.
Mhm.
It's like, in fact, one of the other guys that taught was there, like, what did she say? I don't care what she said. It just melted me.
It's
I mean,
easy.
they have that power.
Yeah, it's easy to do because again, most guys are beta. Most guys, I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying most guys are not used to that.
Yeah.
So when that stimulus comes into their environment, or they're experiencing it, yeah, you're right. You lose it. You have the chills. You get the adrenaline rush, everything else, and you don't even have to see the person. You just hear it right here in your ear.
But a woman, especially when you're younger, for the first time, a younger guy, a woman whispering in your ear. I mean, that is just I had no idea my ears were connected to all these other things. You know what I'm saying?
Remember when we were talking about how women don't have any concept of value added, that learning to be sexy, learning how to make yourself sexy, and learning like unlearning your feminism, which teaches you never to do anything for the express pleasure of a man. Here's the thing, is that women will go against that programming, that conditioning, the conditioning that says never do anything for the express pleasure of a man. If the guy is high enough value, she'll say, screw that feminism stuff. I'm going to break every rule, including my own personal convictions, to get with that guy. So that for the most part, when we're talking about how men don't vet for women, it's very easy for, like, when I'm on with Rich Cooper and we're doing the Before the Train Wreck, a lot of the calls that come in are the same call. It's the same guy saying, I'm in a relationship with somebody, or with a woman who's like 4 years older than me, and it's going south, and she's on antidepressants, and she's like this and she's like that, and just all of these red flags. And it's the same thing over and over and over again. And what we do is we go, well, how come you didn't see this? How come you weren't thinking of this? How come you didn't see the red flags and then make that decision? Well, here's the reason. They're not used to having that opportunity. So it doesn't matter what the red flags are, because the opportunity to reproduce with a woman after you're, like, in the desert, like, what was it Eddie Murphy was saying, if you're crawling in the desert and somebody throws you a cracker, it's like eating filet mignon, because you're like, oh my God, thank you for that cracker. Thank you for
best cracker I ever had.
Yeah, best cracker I ever had. And so what happens is these guys don't vet, but they don't see the red flags, even though, like, we would see it, because we're a third party and we're using our rational facilities to do so, but they're using their emotional facilities that their female teachers have taught them to use to overlook those things, because it is more important for them to reproduce at the moment's notice, as soon as they can, because they don't know when their next meal is coming from. So that's why when we go, I can't believe you didn't see these red flags. Well, of course, because you're in a state where you have to overlook those things, and you will still overlook those things even after the trouble begins, because you are so starved for opportunity.
And women know when you're needy. Women know when you're thirsty.
It's a sneaky cologne, right?
Even if you're an alpha, okay, and you give too much to one woman, whether it's your time, attention, you're always complimenting her, flattering her. You're not
self-deprecation.
It's like they start to go, maybe he doesn't have all the options I thought he did. Then they start second guessing themselves.
Right. I'm going to hold on one second. I'm going to put, these guys are complaining about my volume level. I just put it up a little bit. Let me know if that's okay, guys. All right. So we've got arousal and attraction. That's at the base. We have voice.
I threw the voice in there.
What else do we have? What else?
You're going to be living with that down the road. I used to think it wasn't important. And now, especially as I see so much what they call gray divorce around me, I think that having common interest, having things that you both share besides the children is really important, because once the kids are gone, you get this empty nest syndrome. You've seen so many couples, just break up. They're like, I don't even know who you are anymore. It's like, why did I get married to you? It's bad,
because they don't know each other.
I think you have to
grown apart, right?
Common. Well, you hear that all the time, right?
Yeah.
I think you have to have some common shared interests, or be genuinely curious about things and want to do things together.
Here's where I'm going to go with this. Is I think that's important. I do think that having long term, and again, And yeah, okay, don't get married. Thank you. Let's just cover the MGTOWs here. Yeah, okay, don't get married today. But if you're going to be in a long-term relationship, if that's what you choose, you owe it to yourself, first of all, to know yourself well enough to know what it is that you can live with and what you can't. And everybody gets on my case for saying don't get married or don't get into a long-term relationship until you're in your mid-30s. And I will counter again with this, is like, you don't know well enough until you've experienced enough women so that you can say, hey, you know what? I hated it when she did that. That girl over there had a horrible voice. This girl over here, I had to jump through hoops.
You don't have enough life experience to make a good, solid decision.
Yeah. So I think that knowing yourself is the first thing. And then second of all, a lot of guys will say compatibility. You got to be compatible. Well, like I can think of probably maybe 2 or 3 things that my wife and I started our relationship by being like shared interests. Now, we found shared interests along the way.
You have to be compatible on the critical issues. Mm-hmm. For example, how to raise your child. The important stuff, right?
Right. There's got to be, okay. And that's another thing is, are you a guy that says, hey, I would only consider marriage because I want to have kids and I want to raise my kids in a 2-parent family. If that's the only consideration for you to ever get married, then you've got to be, you have no margin for error on this. You have to be able to, you also have to be able to say no. You have to have a confidence in yourself. That's another reason why I tell guys you should be non-exclusive until you're at least in your early 30s, because you still need the capacity to say no. You will not be in as good a sexual selection position until you get to a point where you have the things that women are looking for, particularly in a long-term relationship. So when women are at their most necessitous, that's when men need to understand she needs me more she needs me more than I need her. And again, that's the power dynamic. Is anybody in the cardinal rule of relationships is anyone who needs the other the least has the most power in that relationship. Guys don't understand how the power dynamic shifts as they make more money, as they become more educated, as they become a better judge of character, as they, become more established in the things that take a long time for a man to mature into, so that they have those things. And hopefully you're still staying on top of your physique and still taking care of the basics at the bottom of the pyramid there, where you've got to do that kind of stuff. So I'm looking at arousal and attraction as sort of the base of this. I think that there needs to be also, I think we should include in the base of the pyramid, at least a baseline compatibility between the man and a woman. Now there's going to be things that you're going to grow into, or maybe even grow out of later on, but at least you have to start with that. I would also say this: the base of that pyramid needs to include frame. You have to have that frame, whatever the frame is that if you do not have frame going into that relationship, you are starting at a deficit.
Not only that, once you've lost control of the frame, it's difficult, if not impossible sometimes, based on who you are, to get it back. Mm-hmm. So if you're going into the relationship as she's in control of it, all is lost. All is
right.
I want to tie that into the next thing that I specifically wanted to talk about today. Single moms. It's one of your iron rules at Tomasi, but this cannot be emphasized enough. I've got 2 sons. Michael's 21. David's 20. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is my advice to them. Never, ever, 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 under penalty of death, get married to a single mom, especially when you're in your 20s and you've got more choices. Okay. Mm-hmm. And here's why. And you talked about frame. Okay. I don't know if the woman was married before or if the child was just out of wedlock. Either way, there's a guy involved. Mm-hmm. And that guy can come into your life at any point and interrupt your entire life. Okay. So you're always going to be at this risk of having a third party jump in and just create chaos for you. You already have relinquished just by marrying this woman, relinquished part of your frame. Because there's another guy going to get involved, could pop in at any time. He could be out of the picture for 10 years, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's in and just making your life a living hell. Now, I used to think that you could resolve that problem by, say, for example, finding the father, whoever he is, wherever he is, and having him relinquish all parental rights. Okay. Mm-hmm. That sounds good, but it doesn't necessarily work, because what you're really doing is, like it or not, you're picking up somebody else's child. You're taking on some other man's responsibility.
That's
great. And I used to people go, oh, well, it's Pat, it's okay. Her kid's 14. He's going to be 18 in a couple of years, 4 years. I mean, how bad's that?
He's really great.
It's going to be really great. Well, here's the deal. Okay, here's the deal. You might be one of the lucky ones, and you might have a perfect kid, okay? And then at 18, he or she is out of the house, no problems. But if you're one of the unfortunate ones and you get what I would call a bad seed, that problem will haunt you until the day you die. 18 is just a birthday for that individual. They're going to outlive you. They can be there throughout their adult, lifetime, just making your life chaotic for both you, your wife, and whatever children you've got involved.
I'll tell you. Are you done?
No.
Okay. I was going to say, are you done? Because you were on a roll there. So I was going to say is that I think this was about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I saw this tweet by this woman who, or maybe it was somebody who gave me a DM, but the situation was is that this woman was in a relationship she was a single mother. Mm-hmm. She was in a relationship with a guy that she really considered very alpha. That guy said that he would not be in a relationship with her. He would not even consider her, certainly not for marriage, but not even a long-term relationship, unless she relinquished the child and the child would go back with the biological father. Now, her predicament was is that the biological father was like a deadbeat or a loser or something like that. And she didn't want to put the kid, but she really wanted to capitalize on the opportunity to be with this guy who made a lot of money, was really good looking, and was considering her for a long term. But he wanted, and this is like when we talk about like infanticide and primates, I think that human beings have that, but we don't kill the kid. Well, usually we don't kill the kid, but there is a what is it? Step parents are like 8 or 10 times more likely to abuse that child or to hurt the non-biological child if it's a single mother. That I don't think that is a coincidence. I think that that's actually part of our mental firmware.
There's not a month or not a week that goes by around here where we don't have something like that.
Yeah, and it's
where you got a single mom, and there's a series of guys, uncles coming through the household. They have no biological connection to the kid. They do unspeakable things to these children because they see them as competition.
Right.
That kid is taking time away from the mother. Okay.
Right. And
let me get back to the advice here, though. That was the advice for my sons, 2021. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, at different stages of life, let's say you're 40 years old. Okay. And you're out there dating. You may have kids yourself from a previous relationship, or women, chances are they're going to have a child or two, maybe from previous relationships as well. I think I told you the story before. Good friend of mine, Mike Gallagher, radio talk show host.
Familiar. Yeah.
Right. Okay. He married a woman. She was a nurse. She was involved in she was married to an alcoholic that beat the kids. Mike comes in, and you'll call it the white knight, whatever you want. He married her and adopted the 4 boys as his own. In fact, if my memory serves me correctly, he got the dad to sign off on any parental duty. But he took those kids under his wing, and raised them as his own. They love him as their real dad. Mm-hmm. So that's a very different story than what the advice that I would give to a 21-year-old.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think definitely that needs to be sort of in the base of the hierarchy as well, and maybe it's a step above that.
When women hear, whether it's Rich or somebody else saying, "Don't marry single moms," I made my case very specific here for somebody that's in their 20s. Because that's at that time you don't have to do that. There's going to be other choices out there for you. As you get older, and maybe you get back into the dating game, 40, 50 years old, the reality is that everybody is going to have
children or baggage.
Children from previous relationships that come in. It's really not negotiable.
Yeah, for sure. And particularly when you're a young man, I think. And again, like I don't think I should even consider monogamy until they get to at least 30 years old. But remember when we were talking about how you, as a man, you can't create a list of prerequisites. You can't do that without a mountain of criticism for something like that. The other thing is and Rich, again, another thing that he's gotten in trouble for is advocating for what we just said as men should not consider a long-term relationship with a single mother. Women, again, lose their minds about that. And but
with Rich, there's a reason. Rich got his chain pulled. He hooked up with a lady who had a couple, I think 3 boys, something like that. And Rich being the good guy that he is, he got emotionally connected with those kids. He started, treating them like his own kids. And then she pulls the rug out, and it's like he not only lost her, but he lost the kids as well. That's why Rich says that.
Yeah. That's part of the the risk that you take by becoming involved with that you can become emotionally attached to the kids, and then things don't work out and then you're out of there. But why is it, again, why is it that women lose their minds when a guy says don't get involved with a single mother? Well, but the reason for that is, and the reason for what I was saying before, men can't have any standards, and if that's one of the standards, they don't like that as well. But what happens is what's happening is it puts men into a position of control with respect to their hypergamy. Right. So what it is it's a man that steps in and says, you know what, I don't think men should consider women who have children already to be eligible to be my long-term mate. And the reason that women get pissed off at that is because they're used to 100% complete unilateral control over their hypergamy. Mm-hmm. So when a guy says, I have these standards, that removes hypergamous control from her. And then it's like, how dare you do that? Because we live in a gynocentric society that pretty much is founded on fulfilling women's hypergamy. So you take that power away from them, even in the most marginal sense. And it's on the 6 o'clock news, just like you were saying. What are you laughing at here?
Somebody had asked me, is it okay to date a married woman with kids? Whatever works for you, man. Whatever works for you. Yeah. In the words of Pope Francis, who am I to judge, right? Who am I to judge? Right.
So we got that. We've got the voice. We've got arousal and attraction. We've got no single mothers. Is there anything else? I'm trying to figure ways that we can put this into order.
On the list here, I'm looking at the list. What are the deal breakers men should impose on all considerations for a long-term relationship? I think, especially if you're going to get married to somebody, you got to decide up front who's going to be leading the show. Mm-hmm. You talk every week about this egalitarian, we're equally the same. And no, that's not the way it works. We're better together than we are apart, but it has to be somebody in charge. There's no country that has two presidents, no car that has two steering wheels, unless it's for driver's ed. But you get the point. Somebody's got to be in charge of this show. Who's it going to be? You need to agree on that before you put a ring on it. And that's definitely got to be one of the things. And who's going to be making the calls, money wise, all sorts of things that you need to. I mean, if you take the emotion out of it, put it over there for a little bit, and then talk about what are we really getting into here long term.
That's a really good one too. Is who is in control of the finances? Who is making the major decisions? Because
who controls the money at your house?
Statistically, it is women who control the money.
It is. I grew up in a very large house, oldest of 13. My dad came home, both my mother and father worked. Okay. My mother had to work to feed all the kids in the house. She was a nurse. She worked night shift. My dad came home, handed the check over to mom. Mom should be teaching a finance class, like graduate level in some college somewhere, how she was able to do what she did with all of that. In my house, I do. But when I first got married, there was a period where, apparently somebody thought I wasn't doing a good job. I said, really? Have at it, champ. 6 weeks later, boom, it's back in my lap.
Yeah, that was a learning curve for me as well, because when it comes to money, I'm very particular about that kind of stuff. But like when I met my wife is a list maker. She has to know what has to get checked off. We got rent, we got insurance, we got this, we got utilities. So there's this list that she always has to keep. I mean, literally, when I met her, that's what she was doing. Now she does it online, of course, but she was making these lists of things that we need to do. So right now, I'm the one that's the final say in everything, but she's the one who's going to say, okay, we owe X amount of dollars for this. So she's the one who's keeping tabs of that, and I'm the one who's saying, okay, pay this, do this, we're going to work. And I'm also in control of our retirement as well.
So when I had Dr. Piper on a week or two ago, I asked him about that too, because he's traditional sort of alpha, as far as tradcons go. Actually, his wife Marcy's in charge. He said she teaches graduate level courses in finance. He goes, so that was sort of a given. She put together, because he's busy doing other things, out there on the speaking, doing speaking engagements, whatnot. But she has handled the finances. I don't have a problem with a woman doing that. I grew up in a house where that was pretty much what happened.
Yeah, well, I've been at a point, and I've told this story before. I've been criticized for my wife actually calling me up so that she can spend $100 on like makeup one time, and it's like, no, she calls me up because, as Joaquin Rojas has said here, a woman has to respect masculinity, and I think that is a a very important part. I think that should probably be a part of our hierarchy of needs right here, because I think that if there is no baseline respect for conventional masculinity, or if that woman you remember talking about warning signs or what are deal breakers.
Right.
I think if a woman does not have first of all, an understanding of conventional masculinity and does not have a respect for that masculinity, it will definitely cause problems for you later on down the road, because that comes back to I want to do things for his pleasure. He has frame. I want to be feminine for him because he has the conventional masculinity that I have a respect for.
So let me ask you about the makeup thing, because to a lot of guys, to me anyways, $100 doesn't sound like a lot of money.
No.
So was this more of a courtesy because of who you are in the relationship, or was it because, I've had times when don't write a check unless you clear it with me, because there may not be money in there to cover it.
Yeah.
But $100 is so. What's the rationale behind that?
Okay, so here's the thing, and I'll give you the quick version of this. One time this was back in my 9-to-5 days, and I was working at a casino, let's just say, and I was talking to my wife, and she had called me up when I was on a lunch break, and I think I was one of 2 guys in the marketing department that was nothing but women. Okay. And so I'm talking to her. She calls me up. She says, "Hey, I want to get Mary Kay, or I want to get whatever the hell, brand of makeup it is. It's $100. Can I go ahead and spend this?" Right. And I go, "Yeah, okay, sure. Makeup, go for it. Right. But I'm used to that because she has done that since day one.
Was she working at the time too?
Oh yeah, she's working. My wife still does work at let's just say she's a medical professional right now. So then I hung up. I didn't think anything about it. I'm go back to my business, and the women are looking at the table, are looking at me like, "I can't believe you." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "She has to call you to get permission to buy makeup, and then causes this big old ruckus on the table. Women are, "You must really have her under your thumb. You must have a really abusive relationship if she feels like she has to call and ask for permission just for makeup."
Did you get the "I'm glad I'm not married to you" one?
Well, here's the thing is, like, every last woman at that table was either divorced, never married, or has been married like 2 or 3 times. And I said, that's my relationship. My relationship is she has a respect for me, and she asks for my permission for purchases like that. Now, we're not talking about going and buying a car. Yeah, we're talking about $100 for makeup.
Is it really permission that she was seeking, or is it accountability, just letting you know?
It could have been a little bit of both, I would say. I won't say that it's all just permission, but that was one incident of lots of times where she gosh, probably this morning she probably asked me if she could spend something on something.
I knew a guy back in Pennsylvania who was a big FM radio jock, and he was making some pretty good money back in the day. And his wife would go out and shop, and she'd buy all this stuff. He would make her take it back. And I mean, he really had a reputation of just being a cheap bastard. It's like he would make it, and when she wouldn't take it back, he'd take it back himself.
Oh, really?
Money back. He'd just being a dick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So there is I think that in a healthy relationship, a man needs to be in the dominant position. He needs to be the one that is driving the car. Okay. That I don't think that that's any surprise to anybody. However, I think that there is a difference between being the guy who is sort of the beneficent patriarch of the family, and then the guy who has insecurities because he understands there's an imbalance in the relationship. So it's like I know guys who have hit me up and they say, "Well, my wife makes more money than I do, and I'm always constantly checking her phone." Or I'm always they might pull something like what you said, like they're very controlling or very possessive. And that's, right. I've written 2 essays about male possessiveness. One of those is about mate guarding. The other is just simply wanting to constantly establish that hierarchy because they feel like they have to reestablish it over and over and over again because they don't believe in their own BS.
If it's established at the beginning, you don't have to be checking it all the time. I'm telling you, the money thing, moving forward, especially for people like my son's generation, daughter's generation, it's becoming more and more of an issue. There's many households now where the woman is, in fact, the breadwinner. She's
Right.
she's the one pulling in the bigger
I think
pot.
it's like 38 or 40% of households in the United States are now have
I got
women that are out earning
his
the man.
wife is a pediatrician. She makes about $400,000 a year. Okay,
Mhm.
right now he's making 78. Right, but she's not lauding it over him. She's not, because it really depends on the frame of the marriage. I mean, when you meet this guy, there's no question he's in charge. She may be making more money, but he's in charge. He has that alpha dominance.
Right.
And
you don't have to ask about it either, I'm sure.
Well, no, in some households that can work, but I'd say 80% of the households, maybe 90, where that dynamic is at work. It's like, you're my bitch. Yeah. You're my bitch. You're my bitch. All my friends know you're my bitch. You are my bitch.
Yeah, and I'll write this down. We need to do a show dedicated to money and how money affects a relationship. In fact, I was going to say maybe we need to put this in the hierarchy in the pyramid somewhere.
By the way,
you have to out earn your wife,
right?
Or your girlfriend.
When you're looking at a woman, okay, as a potential long-term mate, is she prudent with money? Is she somebody who's just going to spend whatever you give her, and then some, or is she somebody that actually tries to save it? Like, well, this is a better deal here. If they've got that built into them, that is a huge plus as you move forward.
Yeah. Well, and then having that respect. See, here's the thing: is a lot of guys will. What was it? I think Rich was doing some really quick hit video once about how I know what it was. He was criticizing this one guy who was talking about how masculine and how alpha it is to be a stay-at-home dad.
Oh,
to be like either not earning anything or just working part-time and being basically staying at home with the kids and being that, and how that should be. We should change society. And because, of course, everything's social constructionism.
Somebody was just pushing that this week. We do it, Roller. You know it, and I know. We don't have the temperament, especially when children are young. Well, we do not have the temperament to take care of young children.
Well, okay, so there's a temperament side of it, but then there's also this, like when we talk about egalitarianism or the blank slate equalism, that kind of stuff, when you look at societies that are the most egalitarian, like say Scandinavian countries, when they are given the equality of opportunity, men and women opt for traditionally masculine and feminine gender roles. And that's not just in the workplace, it's also in how they organize their homes. And so what I think is interesting is we always want to think of things in terms of the blank slate or egalitarianism, but because we believe in social constructionism. I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of social constructionism, but what it is it's this: everything is pretty much a social construct. Gender is a social construct. Marriage and everything, the way that we live, the way that we interact with each other, with women, with whatever, all of that is because you've learned at some point, like the nebulous society has taught you to do that. And I would say that it is probably the other way around. I think that we're far more influenced by our natural proclivities, our natural evolved mental firmware, than we are by I'm not going to say social influence is not important. It is, but I would say that our natural impulses, our instincts, are far more important than any kind of social learning.
If you can find a woman in this day and age who tells you that I always wanted to be a mom, I wanted to stay at home and have, 4 kids, 8 kids, whatever. Okay. Now, society is going to criticize. That's it. That's your goal. That's it. You just, you really don't want to work or anything. She's going to be criticized. When you tell people, if you're married and you've got a stay-at-home mom, society, looks at that. Oh, you don't do anything. Oh, okay. They treat you like shit.
Yeah. Because,
and find a woman who maybe she does want to do something else. Maybe she wanted to be a nurse. Maybe she wanted to do this thing or that thing. But her primary goal, I always wanted to be a mom and have this number of kids.
Yeah.
That's gold. I mean, if you're looking for a long-term relationship, somebody that's going to be solid, somebody that's going to believe in a traditional family, grab her while you got her.
And I think that it's funny. My daughter has said that. She says, I really want to be a mother and I really want to have kids. And
that's good.
And she's good. Yeah, it's great to hear something like that, especially from your own daughter. But I was just going to say is that I think that going back to that natural proclivity side of things, is I believe that women have an innate maternity instinct.
Right.
You know, women will always say, well, my biological clock is ticking. No, your biological clock is a whole lot different than your maternal instinct. That's maternal instinct is something that comes from a time when you're a child, because women are the only human beings that can incubate a child. So that would stand to reason that they would have had to evolve some kind of mental firmware that predisposes them to wanting to have kids and take care of kids. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that either.
My youngest daughter, Sarah, when she was in 4th grade, one of the assignments they had is, where do you see yourself in 20 years? What are you going to be doing in 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. So she's in 4th grade. What is that, 9 or 10, right? Mm-hmm. So her story was that she wanted to be an X-ray technician. She named the hospital she wanted to work at. Why? Because one of my older girls is an X-ray technician. Mm-hmm. And she wanted she wanted to live in Claremore, which is next to us. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to have 4 kids, but she could only come up with names for 3 of the kids. So
you're agonizing over names for kids that don't exist.
Just the other night at dinner, I said, if you come up with a name yet? I mean, come on, it's been a while, right?
Yeah.
That seemed to other people, though, that's all you want to do is get married and have kids.
Right. It seems like a failure.
Yeah.
It seems like you're a waste of you're wasting your potential.
Cancer or something like that, but that's it.
No, I've said that to my own daughter. I said, don't let anybody convince you that like you're wasting your potential if you want to, you know, have a family and have kids. And okay, if you want to get married, to do your thing. I mean, if you could still balance that out, but don't become some careerist and then say, oh, I wish I would have had kids.
You brought this up on my local program a number of times. A careerist. This is a woman who shouldn't get married because the most important thing to her is her career. And then even Carly, when you were on my show, Carly said, well, why is that wrong for a woman? Guys do it. Yeah, but guys aren't bearing children.
Right.
We're not the ones that are staying home with them. We're not the ones that are nurturing them. We're not the ones, there's a role for the dad, but the mom's role is so critical. You can't be a careerist and have kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and I think more and more women are finally coming to terms with that.
They've been lied to. They've been
lied to. Well, that's part of that's the female blue pill, right?
You have it all, but here's the kicker: you
freeze your egg.
Have it all at the same time, and if you wait too long, you're not going to be. You see these women popping up on what is it, Plenty of Fish, or name your dating app. They're 39, 40, 41, and they want to start a family. It's like, princess, you waited too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that train has left the station. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, then we try to sucker women into believing that they can still live. This is part of the masculinization narrative. Is that we convince women that they can live like guys.
Right.
And so when they get to be 35, it's okay. Don't worry about it. You can freeze your eggs until you find Mr. Right. And then when you're 40, you can totally incubate that kid and have that kid. Or if you don't find them, don't worry. There's a sperm bank down the street. Focus on your career. Right.
You got to tell the story about that Wendy Griffith, the video you sent me. She's from the
Okay. Oh, good. I'm glad we're getting to that one.
She didn't get married until 50. What was it? 54.
Yeah. Wendy Griffith is a figure in evangelical Christianity.
Let me throw this in before.
Go ahead.
She was at some period in her life. I don't know if it was her 20s or 30s. She met what she thought was Mr. Right. They dated for a year, and she thought he was going to get engaged to her. Instead, he comes up to her. This is the coldest of cold, and he says, "God said I have to give you back." Mm-hmm. This is like the most brilliant breakup line ever. You're putting it at God's feet. God said I have to give you back.
Right. Yeah. I should probably clarify who Wendy Griffith is. I'll put Dalrock has done so many really great essays, and this, like, he follows Wendy Griffith on here. Now, Wendy Griffith is a 54-year-old evangelical Christian woman who is, holy and hooking up or something like that, or something.
By the way, smoking hot for 54.
Yeah, not a bad looking woman, but the reason she's not bad looking is because she's never had kids, and she's never, well, as far as I know, she's never been married, and she's never been through that experience, so she doesn't know well enough to. She's part of this this movement, I guess, in women's ministry. And now people will say, well, how the heck does Rollo know about this? Well, this is actually part of book 4 that I'm writing about, because it's part of religion.
Rollo is secretly a Joyce Myers group.
Yes.
Now you know.
And Sheila Gregoire too, and Beth Moore. Yeah. But there is this idea, what happens in particularly in evangelical culture, which is what I'm sort of studying right now for book 4. In that culture, in that church culture, what women do in there is they drag in secular influences into the church culture, and they try to sort of Christianize some of the dynamics that are coming in from modern dating in the modern dating world. And so part of that is that when you get women like the girl that we talked about at the beginning of this video,
right,
she's out there giving you all of these hoops to jump through, or to jump through. She's giving you all of these prerequisites to jump through. And if you don't do that, you're not perfect and she won't marry you. And that's what you have to do to qualify for that. In a religious sense, what happens is women add one more little layer on that. And that is, God doesn't want me to be with a guy who is not the best dude for me. And so therefore don't settle. And the settling aspect is really driving modern women crazy today, because they will get to the point where they end up in their epiphany phase and they're looking around and Mr. Right's not there. The soulmate that God had preordained for them is nowhere to be found. So they're stuck in this dilemma. And the dilemma is this: do I settle for this guy who's just kind of okay, or do I wait for the guy who's my soulmate that God has preordained and maybe I'm going to meet him? It's almost like being an alpha widow for a guy that she's supposed to meet in the future rather than a guy that she's been with in the past. And so what they do is they say, well, God said that I should reserve myself for my husband, and here I am 54 years old, and she's still professing the same kind of principles that Sheryl Sandberg did when I use her as sort of the example of Sandberging hypergamy, have fun and follow your career and do this. Instead of party with the bad boys, it's do what God wants you to do. And don't worry, when you're 54, some guy will come along and he'll be the perfect one. And she's still waiting.
Some sort of fertility clinic or something like that. It's just, that's, what it's sort of like, and this isn't a perfect comparison, but we've all known guys that, just are crazy. They party like crazy when they're in their 20s, right?
Oh, yeah.
And, okay, so then you're in your 30s. Once you get in your 40s and 50s, I know guys that are still doing what they were doing back in their 20s when they're in their 40s and 50s. It's not funny anymore. It's actually sad. Mm-hmm. And it's she's acting like somebody would maybe in their 20s, mm-hmm. except, Father Time, that train, it left the station, honey. Mm-hmm. But man, poor God, he gets such a bum rap. He gets blamed for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Where's my perfect dude, right?
I got to remember that line though. God said I have to give you.
God
back.
said, yeah, I have to. Yeah, and I love how he turned that one around on her and said, you know what?
It's like when Dr. Piper was on. Remember, he was talking about there was a woman talking to an all group of men, Christian men, and she said, the Spirit told me. Well, the Holy Spirit. I mean, who's going to argue with that? It was like kryptonite. These guys were powerless because the Spirit had told her.
Well, that, and I, speaking of Dr. Everett Piper, it's like I had this conversation with him too. It's like there's no way around that. I'm sorry for getting off topic here, but God is the final word in the conversation, particularly when you're talking in a religious context here. So if it's like, well, God wants me to wait for the perfect guy to enter into my life. Well, God said so. Who am I to tell you settle for a guy who's who might be a good match for you? And here she is, 54 years old, still unmarried, and teaching other women to follow in her footsteps. And I don't know, if I was a Christian woman, that'd be really depressing.
I think you're actually long term. You're probably better off staying single than settling. Because settling, it doesn't work for anybody.
Well, she is doing that, but she's trying to find, it's the hamster, right? It's the rationalization hamster. Is like, why am I still single at 54 years old? It can't possibly be me. So it's either God or it's all these guys who won't man up and ask me out on a date and go and jump through these 70 prerequisites that I have.
A doctor friend of mine was bringing around his new girlfriend to show off to everybody. She's 47 years old, smoking hot. She looks like she's maybe 36. Okay, and at 47 though, everybody, all the guys in the room said the same thing. Not to his face, but more behind his back when he left. It's like, what's wrong with her? If she's 47, she's got no kids. There's got to be something really wrong with her, because what's the deal? I mean. Yeah. If she's 47 and single, it means a lot of other guys passed up an opportunity at this really hot chick. What is the deal?
Yeah. Well, and that's another essay I've written is if she's single plus hot equals crazy. Okay, so because I mean, think
Never
about it.
stick your wedding crazy, right?
Why would a woman still be single? Like this chick we were just talking about, Wendy Griffith. You know, she's still an attractive woman for being 54 years old. Now, let's just put that into perspective. Relatively, so she's attractive. I'm sure she was very attractive in her 20s.
So you're saying you wouldn't kick her out of bed for eating crackers, right?
No. So, but let's just look at it this way. So, at what point, and women don't think this way either, because they remember we talk about value added and all this other stuff. I think in this case, she wants to believe that guys should only want her for that value added. They should only want her because of her religious, convictions, that's something that men ought to be attracted to. But here's the thing is, like, there's a reason why guys haven't taken a chance on you, even in spite of you being attractive. There's a reason why guys haven't taken a chance on you and haven't wifed you up at 54 years old, because you're crazy. Because there's something there's something else there. And what happens is women's solipsism prevents them from having that insight.
But Rolo, Wendy is a quality woman.
Quality woman. Yes.
Remember that? You've written about that too. The myth of the quality woman.
Yeah. Well, the myth of the quality woman is, and I come down on guys for that, but you can also apply that to women as well, who, if the women believe that they are a quality woman and that guys should naturally be drawn to them, then it's either God hasn't given me the right man yet, or it's men's fault. And that's where we get into when women get to be like 35, when they get just post epiphany phase, that's when you hear phrases like, where are all the good guys? Why, men must have fragile egos. Men are infantile because they want to date guys who are not 35, but 25. They want to date 25-year-olds. And so they have to do that because first of all, there's social conventions that help them sort of ease themselves into the idea that maybe they're not going to get married. And they're, you can say it's a loneliness thing, but I was going to say is that there has to be some reason that is not them. Because they've been brought up again from the time they were 5 years old by Disney and all of their teachers, plus women's innate solipsism, so that when they get to 35 years old and no proposals of marriage are forthcoming, it can't possibly be them. It must be whatever is out here that affects them solipsistically, and that's why it's never even consideration.
So I think I told the story with you before, a comment made by a woman: you're not being properly taken care of. If you could find somebody, that meets all of those other requirements that we already put out there, that the physical attraction, the genuine desire, the voice, all of that, but somebody that genuinely wants to cook for you. They want to clean the house. They want to help you in whatever way they can. Mm-hmm. That's a catch right there. And that is becoming such an oddity in our society today. It's almost like a unicorn. It's just like they don't exist anymore.
This is really good. It's sort of pertinent to the question. Yolo has a hi, Rolla. If she has respect for your masculinity, should she give her paycheck to him, to the guy, so he can use it in the family? What about money for herself? I would say this is, if you are going to be in a, for lack of a better term, let's just call it a conventional marriage where the man is the dominant guy in there. The man should be making those decisions. The man should be the one who says, okay, this is how we're going to use our funds. This is how, especially if you're going to put this in a biblical context, that's what women are supposed to do. If they're going to respect God, that is what they're called to do, is to say, okay, I'm submitting this to you. And women hate this question because it seems like the guy's pimping her out, right? Go out there and earn some money and bring it back here so I can get some beer,
So two real quick stories here about paychecks. Mm-hmm. My dad, right out of high school, went to work for Bethlehem Steel, which was a really good company to work for back in the day. And he went in the Army, and I asked him, I said, how come you went in the Army? He told me the story. His dad would come to Bethlehem Steel every Friday and pick up his paycheck, and he would give my dad $20. Yeah. Grandpa pocketed the rest. I worked for an aerospace firm at one time, where there was this guy, we called him Squirrely, Dale. Oh, it was so sad. He was a tiny little guy, and his wife was about 400 pounds. She came to work every Friday and picked up his paycheck. Uh-huh. That was her money. It was, I can understand, like, my dad would come home and give my mother the paycheck, right? But to have your wife come in and take it in front of all your coworkers, your friends, pick up the paycheck, week after week. I mean, nobody questioned who was in control of that marriage. She was.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
and then she'd have to sign the check before she'd leave.
Okay,
make a big deal out of it every week.
So, and I think this ought to be a deal breaker for guys. I think that men need to make more money than their women. They need to be the one who is in control of the finances, but also and that's rubs women the wrong way in an era.
You're spot on. I feel the same way too. I could not be in a relationship where the woman, and maybe it's because I'm old school, I don't know, where the woman was making more than me. I couldn't be there. I would feel like, I don't know, somebody cut my balls off.
Right.
Unless
again, and why do you feel that? Why is that an instinct for guys to say? Because a lot of women will say this, well, you're threatened, or you're insecure in your masculinity if you can't marry me and I make more money than you, blah, blah, blah. And we're getting more and more of that, because as we're projected into 2026, women are going to be the majority of doctorate and master's degrees. They're going to be, I would say, probably by 2025, it will at least be 50-50. It'll be half women and half men who are the quote unquote breadwinners. And so what's interesting to me is we want to believe in this nonsense about how it's all social constructionism, and you as a guy, you need to man down and let her make the money, and that doesn't mean anything because you can live in this 50-50 egalitarian, but yet you still feel like you're not. And you say, well, that's just you being insecure. No, it's not. It's part of masculine firmware.
I know a situation where the lady's a doctor, she's making good money. The husband, perfectly healthy individual, doesn't do anything, does nothing, is a leech that sucks off of her. To me, as a guy, it's not in my business even, but as a guy, that kind of stuff pisses me off. It's like, why aren't you doing, maybe you're not going to be able to make the kind of money she's making. Get off your lazy ass and do something.
Yeah, at least do it. Yeah. At least have some sort. And I hear what you're saying, because I think when you and I were talking about that one article, well, actually, it was the study about how women are finding guys economically unattractive.
Right.
They think the same thing
that
you do. Yeah. So they're confirming that even in popular culture, they're still confirming that. So what's the mixed message that's going on here is you're a insecure, fragile in your masculinity guy if you feel threatened by a woman making more money than you. And then one click over, and it's like more men are economically unattractive to women. Well, what the hell is it? So you as a guy have to. I definitely have to put that in the pyramid here, because that has to be a basis for you, and you have to be the one that's making more money. And maybe that's tough. Maybe that's hard for you to do. Right. At the very least, you need to express and live out and manifest a masculine dominance that is in some way a counterbalance to your wife making more money than you. How you do that, I don't know. Maybe you go out and chop wood. I don't know. Maybe you go out and do whatever it is that you're gonna do yeah, exactly. Or you. By the way,
and I'm looking at the time here because we're hitting 5 already. But I want to get to this one that you put in there. Sure. Why is damaged? And I want you to define damage. Why is damaged a badge of honor for women today?
Okay. So here we go. I actually put it in the I think I put it in the description. There's a post I have called Damaged. And what I wrote about in that is that the idea, just like what you were saying a little while ago, is when guys get into their, like, say their 30s or their 40s and they start dating, it becomes almost impossible for them to find a woman who doesn't have baggage. She doesn't have, find a single woman with no children and is a well-adjusted individual and isn't like hot and crazy, like guys will tell me this all the time, particularly like 45-year-old guys getting back into the sexual marketplace after a divorce. They'll tell me it's impossible. You can't possibly find a woman like that. And I agree. It is definitely a challenge. Let's just say that. But what happens is women understand that, and they use the idea that damage is sort of a badge of honor for them. Like if a man has problems with them, it's because that damage excludes them from men's consideration, and so they think that it's another way of playing the victim card. It's like, well, men just aren't strong enough to engage with a damaged woman like me. They're just too insecure in their masculinity to deal with all the red flags that I'm showing up.
What does that mean? Does that mean having kids? Does that mean being through?
It could be a lot of different. It could be a lot of different things. I think that a lot of women would like to claim that they are damaged. Well, I get this here. One of my favorite ways that I hear women say this is like, if they, when I talk about how women are attracted to, aroused by whatever, like convicted criminals, we talk about hybristophilia. That they've even got a name for it, right? It's women who are innately attracted to guys who are dangerous, like guys who are murderers, like Nicholas Cruz, the guy who shot up the high school. He's got a teenage fan club almost immediately because he's dangerous. He has the capacity to kill. And you'll see this all the time. They have to separate female prison guards from the male population because they're too concerned that the women will fall in love with these guys and try to break them out of prison. And so it's so common that's the practice that they have to do. So what I do is anytime I point out a story like that, and I say, look, it's only women who do this. So this has got to be part of women's innate mental firmware to be attracted to guys who have the potential for violence, who are dangerous men, who have this proven ability to be a dominant alpha male. And that's why they're in prison, because they express that alphaness in antisocial ways. Well, when I say that, normal women will say, well, that's because they're damaged. Those women are just damaged. There is a part of there's a problem with them, and so you can't use those women as the benchmark for whatever principle it is that you're trying to prove by saying this kind of stuff. And that's one illustration. So if I say, well, what you just said for a minute here is women who are single mothers will naturally prioritize their children above any new guy that comes in. And so what women will say is, well, only the damaged ones do something like that. It's always this very convenient outlet to say, well, if a woman is damaged, it kind of excludes her from the generalities that you would think of when it comes to women. So it's almost like this free get out of whatever, get out of single motherhood, get out of hybristophilia, get out of jail card for women to say that they are damaged. Those women are damaged, and I'm not, because look at me, you should date me instead.
What do you call it? And the name escapes me right now, but anytime you're talking about a general concept, somebody, and it's usually a woman, will bring up, well, they'll give you their case, and their case turned out the other way. That negates what you're talking about. What's the word for that?
I'm at a loss here. Anecdotal evidence. What do they say is like anecdote is not the plural of data.
That's not what happened in my case.
That's solipsism. Is what it is. It's personal.
It's because their case didn't turn out that way. You're wrong. Yeah,
it is personalization, and you will notice this. You'll notice this a lot, and I don't think anybody, and this is a surprise to anybody in this audience, is when you come up with something that is a general truth about women that is unflattering to the feminine, that is a characteristic of the feminine, women will always start off with, not in my case, not with me, right. me, I, right? Because they want to prove, they think that their solipsistic experience should supersede the larger generalities of whatever it is that you're talking about. And so when you point out, hey, this woman is an example of solipsism, this woman is an example of hypergamy, this woman is an example of female nature that is unflattering to women, you do that and women will say, well, they're just damaged. In my case, I A B C D E F G. Like it's always a personalization. So what they do is they make, and that's really where, when I talk about solipsism, this is exactly it, is that women will take whatever generality it is, and if it's unflattering, they will take that as a personal attack on themselves. It's ego investment is what it is. Is they think that if you say something unflattering about the feminine, that their personal experience is should be the universal experience of it. And that's when I talk about innate solipsism, that women default to that. And you will see that constantly in the women who call you on your show, and in the women who like answer us on Facebook or on Twitter. They always start with me. Here's my favorite one is this. My favorite one is this: is as a woman.
Yeah.
And that's sorry. Go ahead. You're talking about
even my producer Carly on Friday. We were talking about AOC and the money she spends on her hair and stuff. And Carly goes into this like Jack Nicholson, Few Good Men line about, you need me on that wall. You want me on that wall. So she said, you want our hair done. You want us looking attractive because we make you look better.
Yeah. And let me also, this is actually perfectly on topic here too, because remember what she said at the end there. I wish I would have had a chance to say that it was off topic. So I just let it go. But she also said, you want us to look good. You want us to put, get boob jobs. You want us to put on makeup, blah, 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 blah. Cause we're talking about how women, when they put on all this makeup and they put on this stuff, that it is a form of deception. Right. And it is, because you're not that young. Your boobs aren't that big. Your lips aren't that red. Your hair ain't that color, that kind of stuff. We talk about this all the time in the Red Pill. But so it is a form of deception. And listen to what her rationale is. We look good, so you guys get validation from it. We look good, so you guys can feel better about yourself. That's what she said at the end of that. I really wanted to respond to that.
By the way, off air, this is a good part too. We can get into this next week with you on the program. She said, she says women do that for other women. I said, really? I said,
as a competition, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, well,
so let's get to the questions.
Sure. Okay, so thank you, Sam Botta. He's kept track. I read a couple of these. I put a few of these out here. Thank you all for the super chats. If I don't get to you, I apologize. We are on sort of a time limit here. And if I haven't got to you and you really want me to answer your question, if you gave me a super chat, email it to me and I'll answer it to you in an email. So first was Chris B. in Philly, who is a regular watcher, our viewer, whatever. Says, couples under 30 looking to marry. Who wants true love more, men or women? Under 30? I would say it is men who are looking for the true love.
I agree, yeah.
Because and this gets back to why men and women have differing concepts of what love actually is, or how they approach love. My take on this, if you've ever read any of the many articles I've written about this, men are the romantics posing as realists, and women are the realists posing as romantics. And I think that in their 20s, women's opportunistic nature with respect to love is in full swing when they are at their hottest, when they are the most attractive, when they can leverage it the most. So they're far more opportunistic during those times than they would be like romantic. I'm not saying that they're not romantic, they are, but the priority is get the best I can get for the long term, as it, I want to explore my options. That's really the basis of Sandbergian hypergamy, which is have fun with the bad boys, get after it with the guys who are commitment phobic, get after it with the guys who are fun, but don't marry them, right? Because you're going to be looking for the beta in waiting when you get to be into your epiphany phase right there. Well, the thing is kind of opposite for men, because men are very idealistic, no more than when they are like in their youth. So you've got guys who are like ready to jump at the chance to marry a hottie at 19 years old or 20 years old, because they believe in an idealistic concept of love, and they hope, and they don't know this, most blue pill beta guys don't understand that women have a differing concept of love. And so it's men who are the romantics posing as the realists, whereas women are the opposite way. But after 30, that changes.
I wish that I had, and here's a way or advice for any red pilled alpha guy or alpha wannabe down the road. Wait until 35, because at 35, for some guys, it starts a little bit younger. In fact, I told you, once I was about 28, all of a sudden I noticed that there was a lot more available for me than there had been before. Not that there wasn't before, but all of a sudden I had a lot more choices. And that's why, because, the women in my age group, they're hitting the epiphany phase. And they got to get moving here, man. They got to get. But if you're a guy and you wait till 35, complete game changer. Everything's in your control now. You get the pick. Ladies.
I have a really great essay. It's called Moment of Clarity. And what it was is I was answering. It's funny. I picked up on somebody had sent a text or a question to a woman who was an online advice columnist. And he said, I don't understand why I'm 30 years old right now. And the women who wouldn't have anything to do with me when I was like 20 suddenly find me irresistible. Has my ship finally come in? I feel like maybe now I'm more, but they couldn't believe it because they're like, well, what is it about me now that makes the girls in high school or in college or whatever suddenly they want to have sex with me, they want to settle down with me, and they've had their bad boys and the guy couldn't grasp it. So I answered that question because the guy was having a moment of clarity, and I told him, I said, look, you are finally entering into your sexual market value peak years, and you need to, well, first of all, be cautious because the women need you more than you need them, and they see that coming in their epiphany phase. And so that's why they throw things out. It's like, oh, I'm trying to do things right now, I'm trying to get right with God now, and you need to have a job, and you need to no sex until the 6th date or something like that. And so they try to make the beta jump through hoops at that point. But the fact of the matter is the guy is entering into a point in his life where he is more sexually selective.
Here's something you've said on my show locally about porn stars in particular. Once they find Jesus, once they've been washed in the blood of the Lamb, clean again. It's like a fresh start for them. They got to do everything they could possibly think of, and now they're brand new. Mm-hmm. And pastors will bring them in to share their testimony. And if you marry her, man, you get the white knight badge and whatever else.
Yep, that's a very popular meme in evangelical circles because the right around that time, right around the epiphany phase, that's when you find more single mothers in churches because they're looking to settle down. They're looking to do things the right way. And I'm not saying that they aren't. I mean, most of them, I don't know for sure, but I think that most of them genuinely believe that. Yeah. But it's very convenient. It's very convenient that that's the point in their life and their phase of maturity that they suddenly have this epiphany that they need to get right with God. Well, yeah.
Hold on. With vehicles, you can't roll back the odometer, but with Jesus, you can.
You can. Yep. You can. You're a virgin in Jesus once again.
Brand new, Escalade right there for you, buddy.
Okay, David Franco, $5. Thanks, brother. He says, Rollo, you advise people to spin plates, but if you can't get one plate to begin with, how are you going to spin more? All right. Yeah. Here's what you do. You go to John at Modern Life Dating, and you take his body language mastery class.
Yeah.
You need to. This is just an appeal for how do I learn game? How do I get a girl? Well, here's the thing.
What if the only thing I get is paper plates? Is that still good enough?
Well, here's the thing: is you need all that says to me is that you need to build. You need to continue building on yourself.
Work on yourself.
Work on yourself. Become the best version of yourself. But seriously, go look into if this is in reference to how do I learn game? Go look at Troy Francis. Go look at. I would say if you are more spiritual minded, go look at Goldman Unleashed. There's a lot of good modern ways that aren't cheesy, aren't schmaltzy, aren't pickup artists that will teach you how to go about approaching and attracting women. And yes, I understand that it is dangerous. I was just reading that one story about that poor kid in the UK. It was 19 years old, and I think all he really did was put a hand on a girl's waist, and suddenly he's a sex offender. Yeah, I was kind of hoping we were going to be able to talk about that on Friday, but that might have been a little too hot. Maybe not.
Question.
Kevin VR says, and he's $5. He says, I have a younger coworker. Her voice is like a songbird landed on my shoulder, and I could listen to her talk about a pair of dirty sneakers all day. That one's for you, man. I love
her. I love her already. Haven't even seen her. I love her.
I'll tell you what's funny, and this is not a sexual thing, but like my daughter's voice when I talk to her and stuff, it's like it's music to my ears. Maybe she's because she's my daughter, but when I talk to her on the phone, I still can't think of her in any other way than like she's 10 years old, right? Like I'm talking to her, like, Daddy. Oh yeah, buy me a Corvette, okay.
Remember Mad TV? It's back in the day when there was phone sex going on, right? And they would have like this super hot, sexy sounding voice, and it was some fat, overweight,
big, ugly cow,
hanging out of her mouth, living in a trailer, talking.
Yep. And there, you know what? And they're still that. Well, of course, now we do it with Instagram and everything, but yeah, it's funny to see how the male sexual dynamic can be commercialized over the years. I mean, obviously prostitution, but like how technology has facilitated more and more how we can make money off of men's sexual need. Okay, so here we go. C Palms, $5. He says, have a girlfriend. One major red flag: she is on an antidepressant.
That's dangerous. This could be bad sex.
That might be a deal breaker. Studies show 1 in 10 women are on antidepressants. Is this a deal breaker?
Kills their libido sometimes, depending on which.
I think 1 in 10. I think it's a lot higher than 1 in 10. I think it probably depends on the country that you're in. I think it might be more like 3 in 10 or 4 in 10 at this point.
There's so many. We ought to do
women than men.
We ought to do a show on drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, and
good idea.
Illegal drugs that mess with your libido big time.
Yeah, we should do I don't think we've ever done a drug related show, or alcohol for that matter. And I can speak to alcohol quite a bit. Yeah. Whiskey dick. Right. Yeah. I want to talk about that. Would I say that that's a deal breaker? Yeah, I would, because that is indicative of a larger problem that you will have. Like, if a woman is clinically depressed to the point where she's taking medications for it, you know, women are going to get, well, first of all, you get addicted to that because you don't want it. It's sort of a crutch. They keep coming back to it in points of crisis. So that to me says there's something.
Let's not forget the postpartum depression after pregnancies.
Yeah.
That could be a game changer.
And let me tell you something like that. Don't feel bad about opting out of that. Don't feel bad, because remember, your mental point of origin, man, you are the one. You have to say, how does going out with this chick, what my decision to go out with a woman who is on antidepressants, what does that do to me?
Here's the line. God told me I have to give you back.
Yeah, I have to give you back. It's the perfect one. Gosh.
Yeah, that's the ultimate, man.
It's like chick crack using it back on women.
You can't be mad at you because God told you.
Yeah. Okay. Red Man Anon, $5. Thank you, brother. He says, so bottom line is, healthy long-term relationship can happen when a guy grew to his best and a woman is on her downfall. Fantastic. Okay. Well, here's the thing. A lot of guys don't want to hear this truth, but another essay I have, it's called SMV ratios, like, and healthy attachment, psychological attachment and SMV ratios. And honestly, if a woman thinks more of you, remember, SMV is not just looking better. Like, a woman can be like an 8 or a 9 and still have kind of low self-esteem, and that's going to bring her sexual market value down, because she doesn't realize that she is, or maybe through whatever like psychological thing, she doesn't really appreciate herself as being that. I know that's really kind of a foreign thought, because it's usually the other way around, because a 4 thinks she's a 7 or an 8 these days, but it can happen the other way around. So what in that, I'm going to refer you to that essay. It's SMV ratios and healthy attachments. It's and I made it this way, like there's like a 1-to-1 ratio where the guy is an 8 and the girl is an 8, like what you can expect from those relationships. Like where the guy is an 8 and the girl is a 7, that's like a 2-to-1 ratio. And those tend to be where a guy is 1 step above a woman. That tends to be the most healthy relationships that you can have. A lot of guys think that if it's a 1-to-1, like we're both about the same in sexual market value, then they think they can have some kind of egalitarian relationship. And unfortunately, hypergamy doesn't work that way. A woman wants to look up to you. And didn't you just say something about this, about the 40th anniversary of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton? And you posted that one picture where she's like taller than he is, and he's like kind of looking up at her, and you're like, or he said that Bill Clinton said, "I've been looking up to you for 40 years now," or something like. And I was just like, yeah. Well, I
don't condone what Bill did, obviously, but they had a picture of the two of them together. She's wearing like a tent, and he's smiling. The only reason he's smiling is because he's remembering bringing Sharon Stone to the White House when she was away. That's the only thing he can smile about.
Sharon Stone.
Imagine being married to her though. Oh my God. Celibacy never looked so good.
Yeah. Okay. Ibo says, I'm 33 and easily get dates with younger girls. I use PUA and escalate for sex around date around 3 to 5. My rate getting sex is low. How to change this is my SMV low girl spin. You need to hit me. You keep throwing these at me like every time we do this. Hit me up in email, or I would say, let's see, girls spinning plates or using me. Well, maybe they are using you. I don't know. I don't know enough about your particulars to really give you. But if you email me this, I'll be happy to answer it for you off air. Also, you might want to throw that one at somebody like Troy Francis, because he would probably be a good help for that. YOLO, I think we talked about this one already. He said respect for masculinity. Okay, we already hit on YOLOs. Redman Anon again. He says, isn't grab her while you got her a way to create one-itis for yourself? How can you mitigate this? Yes, absolutely. That's what I was getting at the beginning of this podcast, is that guys, particularly in that 80th percentile, tend to have a scarcity mentality. They can't believe their luck. In fact, they refer to it as luck. If you listen to a guy and he says, "Hey, I got lucky last night," or "Boy, that guy is lucky today," or they think of women in terms of like divine providence, or they think of women in terms of
God really
fortune. The cards were in my favor, or I got lucky last night. If you ever hear a guy refer to women in terms of like fortune or luck, that's a guy who doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that it's not about luck. It's not about fortune. It's about like being able to approach. There's a lot more to it that is predictable than is unpredictable when it comes to approaching women. So yeah, is that a way to create one-itis? I would say definitely. Most guys, I would say practically every guy who has a scarcity mentality, who won't vet a woman, who won't walk away. Guys who won't walk away from a woman, even in spite of her being on antidepressants, right? Or her being on, all these red flags that, like I say, we talk about on Rich's show all the time, is the guys won't do that. And for a guy who's red pill aware and he sees this, and you're using your red pill lens and you say, hey, don't you see all of this stuff? No, he doesn't see that, because his scarcity mentality is blinding him to that. And so the girl he keeps coming back to over and over again is his one-itis, because he doesn't believe he can get anything better. He doesn't believe that this is the only girl that ever touched my dick.
Talk to these guys. They sit there, they'll go, yeah, but. And it's like they'll dismiss stuff. This is different. And they'll listen to us and they'll go, everything you guys are saying is correct. But in my case, the girl I'm with, she's the exception to all this.
She's an exception.
I'm
an exception too. Yeah.
I'm an exception. The rules don't apply.
Yeah. I don't get girls that often. I don't get lucky that often. Well, okay, you need to change your idea about that. That's more about like sort of unplugging from the matrix, and more about killing the beta and unplugging from the blue pill conditioning, and then start thinking about things in terms of abundance, having the abundance mentality.
So people to email you, give out your email. I'm going to give out mine. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. My email is rtrationalmail@gmail.com. And actually, I can go ahead and put that up because I have banners for that.
Let me give my work
go
one.
Ahead.
My work one is pat.campbell, spelled CAMPBELL, just like the soup. Pat.campbell at griffin.news. That's pat.campbell at griffin.news. And in the header, put rational mail so I know where it's coming from. I'll set up a file.
Yeah, and that right there, I put this up, Pat. That's Pat on Twitter right there if you want to get in touch with Pat.
You always DM me on Twitter. DM me on Twitter or PM me on Facebook.
All right, let me move up here. One Man's Way, $20. Thanks, brother. He says, I met my ex when I was poor, a poor Marine. Thought our 8-year relationship, my income went up. What do you say? Oh, throughout our 8-year relationship, my income went up and up. She left me this summer. Is it possible her hypergamy was upgraded because my income grew so much? I would say that it's probably not the income. It's probably not the money situation. It was probably maybe you sort of backslid into blue pill way of thinking. I think that it's really hard for me, and I know Pat, one of your sons is in the Marines right now.
Right.
I have found that throughout my career as Rollo Tomasi and writing and stuff, whenever I get soldiers, I think that there's a real problem with guys in the military when it comes to one-itis, when it comes to being
big
blue
time.
pill, and it's really tough.
My son Mike did 7 months over in Syria. Right now, he's out at 29 Palms training for his next deployment. The stories, they listen to you guys. They listen to us.
Yeah, I know.
Not necessarily in real time, but they'll listen to it. In fact, I sent him the Book of Pook because he was
cool.
going up to Camp Pendleton for 3 weeks. He had some drills up there. He trains people on drones. And I gave him that. I said, listen, read this one and listen to it too, because there was an audio version. But these guys are so young. Even when he went through boot camp, his drill instructor was 27, already divorced twice. And his word, he says, if you remember nothing else that I told you here, he says, don't get married until we tell you to get married. He says, if you need to get married, he said, the Marine Corps will issue you a wife.
Yeah.
But this guy's already 27, and at 27, he's already got 2 divorces. He goes, don't be like me. Don't be like me.
Well, I have run into the most common story I get from soldiers, whether Marines or Army, whatever, is these guys will go out on deployment. They think that the girl that they left back home is being faithful, and then they come back and they find an empty house, or or they're living on base or something, and she's gone when he comes back. And I mean, these guys are, I think that guys who come back, who leave the military and then find that they are, suddenly divorced, are at the highest risk for suicides right now.
We've got the National Guard not far from my house here, the Oklahoma branch, I forget the division name. They've been deployed more than like any other National Guard going back to World War II. But they've done multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. One of the guys that I know, 28 years old, he was over there. He had been involved in a 36-hour firefight in Afghanistan. He gets back to base, opens his laptop to get a PM on Facebook from his wife. I can't do this anymore. She left with the kids and cleaned out his bank account. When they come back, the divorce rate after deployment, when they return, 65%, he told me. 65%. It's insane.
Yeah, I believe it. And so when I talk about guys in the military, I try to give advice to guys. A lot of people want to say, well, if you're in the military, you have to automatically be alpha because you had bullets shot at you, or you're serving the country, and thank you for serving the country. But I have found overwhelmingly that most guys in the military are beta males, or they believe in a blue pill conditioning. When we're asking about, who's more romantic, man or woman, I'll tell you, for whatever reason, soldiers tend to be very romantic, and I think that's one of the catalysts for suicide. Is they come back, their wife and children are gone, or whatever. The girl they left thought was going to be there when they got back, and was giving them hope or whatever, and they're gone. Those are the guys who are more prone to zero out. And so it's really hard for me to talk about that, but I will say that that doesn't make any difference. You can still be a military guy, and you can be very much blue pill, and it can still be just, if not more, dangerous, because you're kind of in a fragile position right there when it comes to, it's one thing to be like masculine and alpha and be able to go and tear someone's throat out and then come back. And then these guys tend to be the most pacified guys when it comes to their girls, or women like just dominate them. But in any other realm, they're alpha. So that's that.
You got one more?
I got one more here. Sonny Lolly says, Rolo Tomasi, if someone says that they don't want kids but are yet to get vasectomies, would you say they're still partly idealistically blue pill? Let's see. I don't necessarily think that. I think that if you don't have kids and you get a vasectomy, I think the guys that do that are often talked out of that. I think a lot of guys, I think it's more common now than it used to be in the past. I also know that most doctors will try to talk a guy out of getting a vasectomy if he doesn't have kids, and especially if he's single. Another thing about vasectomies is if you are married and you're trying to get a vasectomy, doctors will often require some sort of written permission slip from your wife to do so that they aren't. Mommy says I can do that. And that's one of a lot of other, there's also things about retirement funds and shifting money around where you got to get mommy's permission as well. Is that part of being idealistically blue pill? I don't think so. I think that guys who get a vasectomy, if they don't want kids but are getting a vasectomy, would you say they're still probably? No, I think that they're probably, if they're doing something like that, they want to protect themselves. They say, hey, look, you know what? I don't want to have kids, and I'm going to take matters into my own hand. And that's this is what I'm going to do. I don't necessarily think that's a red pill or a blue pill thing. I think if it's red pill at all, it's because guys don't want to be on the sharp end of a paternity suit. So I wouldn't.
I got to wrap.
All right, yeah, we got to go. Thanks for guys. Thanks for everything. You and I will be on our new time on Friday on your show. That is going to be
Central, which is 11 a.m. Central on Friday.
11 a.m. Central. Okay, guys, and then of course, come check us out. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. We're on every Sunday at 4:30 p.m. on my channel, and of course, Rule Zero is always on Saturdays at 11:30 a.m. I will also be back on Wednesday for Rolo Solo. That'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And hang in there, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. All right, guys.
If you remember nothing else from today, the best goodbye line is, God told me.
God told me. I have to give you back. Yes,
Give you back.
It's turn to hand you back.
See you next week.
Bye, guys.
Out.